Surgery is a lot like running a marathon. Our minds might be put under, but our bodies are far from. It's being subjected to the same physiological stresses: elevated heart rate, increased oxygen demand, tissue catabolism, a fight or flight state that lasts for hours. So why do we routinely send people through to surgery unprepared? So I'm Maggie, I'm a PhD student at the University of Toronto, and I research this problem. My research is in something called pre-surgery rehabilitation, or prehab. It's defined as structured interventions delivered during the weeks or months before surgery, including exercise, nutrition, stress management, psychological support, addressing modifiable risk factors before surgery. My work, building on decades of prehab research, has helped show that building physical and psychological reserves with prehab before surgery can lead to better outcomes, reduced risks, and faster recoveries. Beyond the research, one of my greatest contributions has been helping establish the first prehab program in Ontario as part of standard of care here at UHS. I've been involved in providing the care to over 200 patients, and I've helped scale the program to receive over 1,500 referrals over the past 3 years. But really, that's nothing compared to the 25,000 procedures that UHN completes each year, and that's just our hospital network. The problem is we don't serve everyone. We see less than 1% of those who could benefit. People need this, though. I see directly how much time we have before surgery, how that time can be used, how to benefit these patients. We can support them while they're receiving cancer treatments to shrink their tumors before surgery. We can support them while they're waiting for transplant and they're undergoing dialysis. But why can't we support everyone? The challenge is there are barriers. It's funding dependent, meaning that after traditional funding cycles end, what happens to those services? For many, it means they stop. And while you've contributed to the knowledge, you haven't contributed to something sustainable. For referring providers, it's something very confusing, to know what's what, which research programs exist and what don't. And for patients, one day your care is there, and the next day, it's not. On the other hand, for services like the UHN Prehab program, it's limited by structural constraints. Those constraints prevent us from seeing all patients. We only see the highest risk cohort. We can also only see those in our hospital network. This is known as fragmentation. And establishing new services is costly. Acquiring that funding is complex. This is a big challenge, and I think anyone in our position would ask, is there another way? That's why we founded PrehabRx. Let me take a second to reintroduce myself. I'm Maggie, I'm a PhD student researcher, I'm a healthcare practitioner, and I'm a co-founder. We founded PrehabRx to reduce the adoption barriers and increase care continuity after traditional funding cycles end. I co-founded with my master supervisor, Dr. Daniel Santamina, and medical oncologist, Dr. Zia Punja, who was inspired by what we could do for his patients. I've spent a lot of time thinking about how we can transition from research into solutions that people can actually use. And that's what this next part is all about. Because at the start, it was hard. I had pursued a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in science. I wasn't particularly business-oriented, nor did I really want to be. I had no science commercialization training. And my peers and seniors around me also held commercialization and entrepreneurship at a comfortable distance. In fact, some actively disapproved of it. But I think that science commercialization is a widely misunderstood concept that is needed now more than ever. Our GDP rate is dropping, and that's led by low productivity. Canada is an international leader in academic research and development. We have the highest number or proportion of university and college level graduates in the G7. But yet, our growth in our economy is lagging. Our industry innovation is slow. That's where we need change. In a world where there are big problems, the forms of knowledge translation that have served traditional academia is faltering. Publications, conferences, lecture halls, these are not serving us. But this is what we're trained to do. It can be really difficult to break the mold, but resources do exist. During that initial phase when we pursued these resources, we applied to incubators, and it was really tough. We were faced with this application. Everything on this application was foreign. It was discouraging to not know the lexicon of business. I had never seen, as a PhD student, business models or competitor analysis, go-to-market strategies. It was very, very disorienting. But I just want to highlight for others in my position that it's kind of like a grant. There are some parallels I want to draw. For one, as researchers, we're trained to justify a research problem. And a business problem is very similar, follows a similar structure down, but instead of a research question at the end, it's a value proposition. But fundamentally, you're still offering something to a population with a target outcome. It's analogous to research methodologies in the same way that we have qualitative and quantitative research models. We have business model frameworks that we can select from. And the goal is to select something that makes sense for your research question, or should I say value proposition. Finally, for something like company milestones, we like to think about this in the research world as projected results or hypothesized results. It's really an evolving hypothesis of what's to come. So 2 years ago, we sent in that application and we got in. Once you get in, the first thing that they orient you towards is getting from 0 to 1. 1 being your first customer or your first user, first relationship. There were a million things that we could learn from getting from 0 to 1. 2 years later, we got from 0 to 1. And I want to boil down how it was just 5 things. First, it's problem. This is what we thought we knew best. This is why we started. But it can be overwhelming at first to define the problem. We were able to get there, though, by thinking of it as a job to be done. So our problem wasn't reduced access to prehab. It was the fact that there were low specialized resources, knowledge, and personnel to implement new prehab programs. From there, we had our problem, so we needed to develop an MVP, or a minimum viable product. And this is somewhere we would have gotten stuck as well, because we didn't have a particularly fancy, novel technology or solution. We had a very basic website you could refer to or sign up and receive specialized resources and access to a limited network of providers. But the liberating thing we found out in those initial days is that an MVP is really just defined as something you can go get feedback on and iterate upon. In that way, it can be an idea, and that was extremely liberating. Because the next step after you have that MVP is that you need to get outside perspective. You must get it from people that have done it before, but also people who are going to be using and interacting with your solution. And ideally, the more, the better. This is somewhere we would have also gotten stuck, but fortunately, I was able to look around for resources. We got into a program, a 4-month funded full-time program to go out specifically focused on getting perspective. I needed to conduct 100 informational interviews with patients, providers, insurance companies. It was very scary. I can't lie. I hated the idea of pitching. I don't like being pitched to. I'm not that type of person. But something that really helped during those initial days was the idea that you don't need to pitch your idea. The goal is to get perspective about process and pain points. So our problem wasn't, would you use our solution? Our questions were, how do you currently support patients before surgery? How do you onboard new services to your company? What does that process look like? What's been challenging? And it was really, really insightful. You can't do it alone. Because at the start of innovating, you have to be comfortable with pivoting to the new information. When we first started, we had a vision of where we wanted to go and how things would work, but we were off. We thought the problem was that implementing new services was hard. But in fact, learning more, we knew that we needed to actually include other features to help reduce administrative burden, improve health equity, be regulatory compliant. And now our solution solves all those issues. The point is, you have to keep pivoting towards product market fit, basically something someone sees and instantly wants. And if that means pivoting to something completely new, that's okay too. Not everything needs to be a startup. It helps to reframe pivoting as not a failure, but part of the process. Because you've gathered those insights, you have increasingly unique positionality. And your positionality is everything. When getting from 0 to 1, your positionality is your 0. It defines what you're able to see. It's your vantage point. It's the problems that you can see, the pain that you can see, and the solutions that you can think of. You just need to define the 0 to know where you need to go to get started. And so here's the key out of all of these steps, is that it's a cycle. And in the real world, it's not about how perfect you execute each cycle or each step in the cycle. It's the fact that innovation happens by how many times you can get around it. How many times can you complete the cycle? So I used to believe that my role as a researcher ended with discovery. But through this journey, I learned that science and commercialization really are two sides of the same coin. And if we as researchers want to truly drive change, we need to embrace the reality that commercialization is vital to making science matter. Thank you.